Welcome to another edition of the Nightly News. Ted, Atlanta is afire. There's a peaceful protest in the streets, according to mainstream media. Antifa's at it again down there. What in the world is going on in Atlanta?
I got to tell you, Keith, I just had a great meeting with the McLennan County Sheriff, the great Parnell McNamara, and we're praying for Captain Steve January, who is going through a life and death struggle in the hospital right now. So I know these heroes of law enforcement. To my friends, who many of which qualify as heroes of law enforcement in Atlanta, do not obey the order to stand down and facilitate, allow violence. You need to intervene. You need to stop people that are torching and killing and raping and carjacking and murdering and burning down the beautiful city of Atlanta. Would somebody with a badge and a gun please do their job and stop these freaks? We saw it in Portland. We saw it in Chicago. We saw it in New Orleans. We saw it in Detroit. Well, not Detroit so much, because people there actually have guns and defend themselves. There's more defensive use of firearms in Detroit than any city in the world. That happens to be my hometown. We're not the murder capital because we're more violent. People from Detroit are just better shots. Okay, that being said, Atlanta, good people, don't let them do this. When our friends in St. Louis stood their ground against a violent mob that had been known to kill a retired cop in St. Louis, they stood their ground armed, keeping and bearing arms, because keeping and bearing arms is how good people save our lives. Atlanta, you've got to put an end to this engineered arson, this engineered insanity. What a beautiful city. I remember when I first started going to Atlanta in 1970 with the Amboy Dukes. I mean, in 1967 with the Amboy Dukes, it was just a little village. And now it's this giant metropolis that has now been run by Democrats and now becomes a horrible, horrible hell zone because violence is tolerated. My name is Ted Nugent. I don't tolerate violence. Everybody knows you don't come near me with violence or I'll neutralize you.
Two other points, Ted. I noticed in the first arrest that they listed, all but one were from outside of the state of Georgia. So those people were bussed in, brought in. So that's intriguing to me. And who do you think is behind this? We know George Soros has funded a lot of the unrest in a lot of these Democrat, liberal DA cities. This doesn't seem like a local spontaneous protest.
This is their standard operating procedure, their modus operandi, if you will. I remember years ago when I was protested on my tour by people bussed in. They literally came in buses and they wore American Communist Party regalia. And those were unclean vermin because I had to go through the protesters. I could smell them, unclean communist vermin. And then the media lied, viciously lied, that I said that about my Native American brothers. Remember that? Yeah, I never said it. There were no Indians there. It was all a bunch of white dirtbags with American Communist Party regalia. And they haven't, it might be Michael Moore fan club because no one had figured out hygiene. They stunk, unclean. They were communist vermin. And I stand by that. If you're a communist and you don't shower, you're an unclean vermin. Next, the point is that these violent episodes in every instance are mostly outsiders or at least funded by the George Soros, the deep state, the Democrat Party, the Adam Schiffs, the Chuck Schumers. Now, they can defy this, but like my good friend in Houston said, Sheila Jackson Lee, most murders are a direct result of homicide. These are the people that have authority. I would let them shovel my dog kennels because they'd probably eat the feces. The point is, that truth, logic, and common sense will set you free. And I think truth, logic, and common sense is probably illegal in the Democrat Party. So people in Atlanta, people across this country, again, I'm going to say it, it's a nonstop battle cry. Come to tednugent.com and see what we're doing. I've got my life zeroed in. I've got quality of life in the American dream being the best that I can be in my family and my crew, my kids, my grandsons, my hunting buddies, everybody in my life. My good friend, Keith Mark, we improvise, adapt, and overcome and use positive truth, logic, and common sense, attitude, spirit, and energy to make sure that we are a positive force in the asset column. America, you can do this. Atlanta, you can do this. Spot light the cockroach. By the way, I'm a little late this morning, Keith, because I was examining the heavy-duty aggressive cleats of my steel-toed work boots, and I saw there was a lot of liberal skull tissue within those cleats, and I was going to clean it out, but I decided to keep it there because it seems when I have the skull tissue of liberal freaks in the cleats of my steel-toed work boots, I actually elevate and move more buoyantly.
Well, listen, on the topic of evil, tomorrow, Ted, I want to talk to you about the gay couple that was allowed to adopt a couple little boys. They're in prison now. And of course, they're griping for two reasons. Apparently, they're not faring well with their fellow inmates and they don't like the food. But what a sad story what they did to those two little boys. And I want to get your take on that tomorrow right here on the Nightly Nooch.
You got it.